Alrighty then. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Matthew Baker of Beautiful New York Tours. One of the topics that has been on everyone's mind recently is public statues. People are talking about tearing them down, relocating them to the museums, letting them stay where they are. There's been a lot of controversy about it, and a phrase that those of you who've watched my videos from the beginning are probably getting pretty used to hearing me say, this is not new. The topic of statues has been around for quite a while, and certainly a lot of the current concerns people have about what kind of channels you go through, whether people just go out and topple them over by themselves, are things that they're going to continue to talk about for a while. But the question of the statues themselves is an interesting and an important one. One thing that I have said frequently is, before we talk about whether, when, and how to take down a statue, we need to talk about whether, when, and how to put up a statue in the first place. And it occurred to me that there are plenty of statues in New York City that touch on this subject. So let's talk about it. It happened in New York. The year is 1877, and the place is Central Park. Now, Vaux and Olmsted, the designers of the park, didn't want memorial statues in the park. They were worried that this sort of thing might happen, that one generation would put a statue up and the next generation would wonder why. But they were overruled by the city council, by the mayor, and by the various organizations that wanted public statues in the park. So here you are at a grand unveiling ceremony on Literary Walk. Literary Walk so named because of the statue of Shakespeare at its southern end, the great Scottish poets Robert Burns, author of To a Mouse and Auld Lang Syne, and Sir Walter Scott, best known for Rob Roy and Ivanhoe. But no American authors are honored on Literary Walk until this day. President Rutherford B. Hayes is there to be the master of ceremonies for this unveiling, and 10,000 people are in attendance for the statue of that legendary poet, that peerless master, Fitz-Greene Halleck. Who? Fitz-Greene Halleck. Who? Okay, Fitz-Greene Halleck was an American poet of tremendous renown in his own day. He was known as the American Byron. And he didn't make money from his poetry, or at least not much. He spoke of poets being poor, but he had a very good job working for John Jacob Astor. He walked into John Jacob Astor's counting house and worked as his personal secretary for many years. He became a trustee of the Astor Library, which of course eventually became the New York Public Library, where I used to work, but that's another story. So Fitz-Greene Halleck had a huge number of admirers, including American presidents. Martin Van Buren wrote a letter to him. Abraham Lincoln was said to read his poetry to guests and friends at the White House. He was dearly loved. Among his friends were Washington Irving and his smart set of authors that included William Cullen Bryant and Nathaniel Hawthorne and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and there would be merry meetings of all of these authors together at Washington Irving's home, and Fitz-Greene Halleck would be in attendance. To be on a fly on the wall for those conversations. Halleck eventually retired to his home village of Guildford, Connecticut, where he lived with his unmarried sister until he died in 1867. Never having married himself, it is traditionally theorized that he may well have been gay. It is also believed that some of his poetry was dedicated to a very dear friend of his, whom he may or may not have been in love with, who died quite young when they were publishing together. Halleck was well loved not just for the romance of his verse, but also for his cleverness and wit. He was known as a particularly talented satirist. 10 years after his death, William Cullen Bryant commissioned the statue in Central Park. It was unveiled to great acclaim, and Halleck was promptly forgotten. Shortly later, new rules were instated to determine more stringent requirements for statuary in Central Park. So today, Fitz-Greene Halleck is often used as an example of the problem with public statuary. Not because we discovered anything horrible about him, not because of any deep and terrible flaw in his character, but because of the fleeting nature of fame. Long after most of his writing has been forgotten except among the most scholarly of American literary circles, Halleck has become famous for being obscure. It happened in New York. You can see Halleck's statue and the other statues on Literary Walk when it is safe to do so. Please check me out at Beautiful New York Tours. You can search Beautiful New York Tours on Facebook or email me at baker.tours@yahoo.com. Again, that is baker.tours@yahoo. Thank you very much.